Welcome to Bikers Toolbox, a company set up and run by bikers to sell quality tools to fellow bikers to service, repair and restore their motorcycles, both young and old. In this first video we will show you how to service the brakes using my 1977 Kawasaki Z1000. As we are going to be working with DOT4 brake fluid, which acts as a very able paint stripper, it is important to cover paintwork. We use heavy grade bin bags, which are cheap and readily available. Firstly, we carefully remove the master cylinder cap. You will notice that throughout this work we wear nitrile disposable gloves, which are a must for virtually all bike work. We now need to determine the content of water in the brake fluid using this simple tester. More than 1% will cause corrosion of the brake components, which will affect braking performance and eventually cause complete failure. This fluid is ready to change. Brake fluid should be changed at least every other year, ideally more often. We used to hate bleeding brakes until we discovered the Mighty Vac system in the early 80s. Rather than dirty a new one, we're going to use our original 30-year-old Mighty Vac. Firstly, you remove the rubber nipple cover, fit a suitable ring spanner to the nipple, and then attach the pipe from the Mighty Vac. You create a vacuum in the collection container using the pump, so that when you open the nipple, atmospheric pressure acting on the open master cylinder reservoir forces the fluid out of the nipple. This makes it easy to suck all the fluid out of the whole system. Once you stop seeing fluid coming out of the pipe, close the bleed nipple with a spanner and repeat the procedure on the other caliper, assuming you're working on a twin disc machine. If not, your system's now empty. When the collection container is full, you can pour it into a suitable receptacle to dispose of responsibly later. Now we loosen the brake line feeding the caliper. We are using a homemade flare nut spanner, but you can buy the real deal from our site for less expense than the donor spanner we attacked with an angle grinder years ago. We now undo the caliper mounting bolts. Please note that John is not using a ratchet wrench to undo tight bolts. You should always use either a breaker bar, as John is here, or a T-bar. If these were long threads and a bit tight, he may have swapped to a ratchet, having broken the release, but as they are flying out there's no benefit to be gained. He then unscrews the caliper off the line, ensuring no fluid is splashed on the paintwork, tyres, etc. If you do splash any fluid, remove it rapidly with a damp cloth, which you should always have to hand when working on brakes. In an ideal world, our workshops and garages would always be clinically clean, but in the real world this doesn't always happen. When working on braking systems, however, you must ensure that your bench and vise are clear of any debris. So give it a good clean before starting work and fit some soft jaws to the vise. We have found no better tool than the laser motorcycle brake piston removal tool for removing caliper pistons. Simply select the collet that fits the piston and assemble the tools as John is doing here. Slide the collet into the back of the piston and tighten the tool up securely using the T-bar and ease out the piston. You'll often find that you will need to turn the tool as you extract the piston. Once the piston is out, you simply undo the T-bar on the back, Push the tool into the piston to release it and then draw it out again. Having carefully hooked the seal out of the groove in the cylinder, we need to clean it out, which is most easily done using a wire wheel and a Dremel style multi-tool. Be very careful not to touch the bore of the cylinder, as the wheel will damage its surface. I often polish the cylinder bore with a metal polish, such as Autosol. Spray plenty of brake cleaner into the caliper and using a toothbrush give it all a really good scrub. If you have an airline, ensuring you're wearing safety glasses, blow out all the fluid transfer holes. This caliper is pretty clean, as I look after my bike and change the brake fluid when I should. It was a different story pre-restoration though. If the fluid isn't changed regularly, then water builds up in it, and this starts corrosion behind the seal, which pushes the seal against the piston and stops it sliding out smoothly, giving reduced braking or even seizure. This piston has pitting in the chrome caused by water and is therefore a bin job. This is a vital stage which is often missed out. Using a small brush, cover the inside of the seal groove with red rubber grease and then coat the seal with the same. This makes it all go together more easily, lubricates the seal and helps protect against corrosion. Slide the seal the correct way round into the groove in the cylinder. Not all seals are handed, so you need to check the workshop manual. On more modern calipers, you next fit a dust seal, which is similar to the main seal but smaller and usually has 2 lips inside. Lightly coat the piston with red rubber grease and slide it into the cylinder bore, ensuring you keep it straight and don't snag the seal. It should slide in and out freely. Lubricate the inside of the dust seal with red rubber grease and refit. These rarely fit easily on these old Kawasaki's. Just take your time, be gentle and be patient. Look up the required torque settings for the various nuts and bolts on your brake system. Not using a good quality torque wrench on a motorcycle is madness, especially on the braking system where your life depends on it. Reattach the brake line to the caliper and fit it over the disc. Just poke a screwdriver or something similar to hold it in place whilst you prepare the bolts. I always apply Loctite 243 or similar thread lock on my caliper mounting bolts, but some motorcycle mechanics use copper slip. It is important you use something to bridge the gap between the dissimilar metals to prevent galvanic corrosion. I use thread lock on most fasteners on bikes, as I hate the idea of things coming loose from vibration. Once installed, the bolts must be tightened to the correct torque setting as specified in the workshop manual. Now we must retighten the brake line. Tightly wrap the bleed nipple with PTFE tape before refitting to the caliper. Notice how much easier this job is using a ratchet spanner. At this point we would recommend replacing the old steel bleed nipples with new stainless steel ones. Carefully refill the master cylinder reservoir from a new sealed bottle of brake fluid. Most bikes use .4, but a few like Harley's use .5, but you must never mix them. Attach the tube from the Mighty Vac to the bleed nipple. Pump it up a few times to get a vacuum set up in the container and slowly open the bleed nipple. Continue to pump from time to time to ensure a good vacuum and watch the pipe. After a while you will see fluid start to come out of it and into the container. Keep an eye on the master cylinder reservoir to ensure that the level doesn't get too low, or else it will suck in air. Initially you will have plenty of air bubbles in the fluid coming out, but this will eventually clear. Most bikes will clear quickly and easily. Z900s and Z1000s are not most and are an absolute pain and always harbour air pockets. I have found that Z9s and Z1000s often get air trapped in the line splitter where the brake light switch is attached. The best bet is to release the manifold fixing bolts and tip it up a bit and tap the lines, which usually allows the air to travel back up to the master cylinder. With any bike that doesn't bleed very easily, the best bet, once you've got clear fluid coming out of the calipers, is to pump up the master cylinder with the lever and then strap it up, held in tight overnight, and you'll find that by the morning the lever will be nice and hard. Most bikes bleed very easily with the Mighty Vac, and less than 5 minutes is more than enough time. I hope that you found this video useful. It was shot in my own workshop with my old friend John Hopkins helping. We have in excess of 30 years of motorcycle experience each. We both have hobby businesses repairing and building bikes to help finance our own bike collections.